So you know what the implication is. If you don't fully comply, that means you're hiding something. And if you're hiding something, that makes people suspicious that maybe you had something to do with the Russian interference.
Well, let's get the facts straight. We complied with everything actually relevant to the question of Russian interference. We turned over all of our communications with Russian media, Russian government, Russian business, although there was no communications to turn over. Likewise, anything having to do with WikiLeaks or with opposition research or Fusion GPS. We actually fulfilled all the requests. Most of them were blank. We didn't have any such communications. And what we did have with Russian government and media was really related to what time we were going to show up for an RT appearance and the logistics of our trip to the conference in Moscow with RT. So all of that was turned over. What we didn't turn over was material that basically protects the civil liberties of all Americans. So at a time when our civil liberties are really being seriously eroded, for example, the use of our private data. You know, we have a privacy protection, that's part of our civil liberties, but that's been horribly violated. 87 million Americans have basically had their data taken, and there are up to 2,000 data points on every American that are being used.
Listen, I hear you about that. That's certainly a concern.
Cambridge Analytica thing.
We've been covering it and the potential need for regulation and what will the industry do. However, back to you, what did you not turn over in the name of civil liberties?
Exactly. So what we did not turn over, and I should add, we also turned over our policy positions, which were the same as what we said publicly throughout the campaign. So there was nothing hidden there. We turned over our policy. What we did not turn over was our internal discussions about policy, which were really no great shakes because there was not much difference between the policies that the Green Party has held for a long time and the policies of the campaign. So it's not like there's some, special golden goose that we're protecting here or some vulnerable conversation, but rather we're standing up on a principle. And that is the principle that's part of the First Amendment, our right to basically freedom of association. And that, that needs to be protected, and the courts have always upheld that.
Right, and we'll see. There'll be some litigation here if the government really decides that they want it. We'll see how it plays out. Let me ask you something. With all of the information that's come out since the campaign period, do you still have reservations about whether or not Russia interfered in our election and did so with obvious negative intent?
So let me say, I think it would be naive to think that Russia did not try to interfere. Certainly that's what the United States does, and that's not to justify it. Interference is wrong, and it's an assault against democracy, and it should be pursued. But we should pursue it knowing that we do it too. As James Woolsey, the former CIA head, recently said publicly, I believe it was on Fox, yes, we're doing that, and we always do it. And the records show that we do it about twice as much as the Russians over the course of the past, really since the Second World War. So, this is an issue, and it should be solved, I think, not by, retribution, not by going to war, not by saber rattling. It should be solved really through dialogue and diplomacy, which is showing, that it gets real results on the Korean Peninsula right now. We need to adopt that position right now and not go at it with bombs and missiles and threats, but with international dialogue. And we need a treaty for international non-interference in elections.
That would really be the case for Russia to make, not from the American perspective. Of course, there's hypocrisy involved. Lots of different big state actors do lots of things that they may not want people to know about. But let Russia say that the United States did this to us, and here's how they did it, so this is fair play. From the American perspective, and you running for president more than once of this country, shouldn't your position have been, this was bad what they did, they're trying to do it right now, and we have to stop it?
I think that kind of position, which says that we're in a totally different category from the rest of the world, is not working. This century of American domination, sort of didn't play out the way we thought it would. We're embroiled now. We have the military in practically every country around the world. In the recent taxes that people paid, the average American paid almost $3,500 that went into the Department of Offense, I would call it, not the Department of Defense, $3,500, whereas we put $40 into the EPA. You know, 57% of our discretionary dollars now are going into the military. It's part of a mindset that says, we're always right and they're always wrong, and we're going to be, you know, dominating militarily and economically. We're in a multipolar world right now, and, you know, we need to behave as an exemplary member of the community, and that is by upholding ourselves and leading the way on international law, human rights, and diplomacy.
Well, one of the ways you do that is...
That approach is really paying off on the Korean Peninsula right now, and I think we should be using it more broadly.
Well, that's an interesting nod to the success of the administration, and it's echoed by many others. We'll see where it goes. Hopefully, there is peace on the Korean Peninsula. That may be something that Russia is not that interested in, and that goes to why there's such tension between the countries. Let me ask you one last thing. Why did you go to the RT anniversary and put yourself in that position? You had to know that it would have negative implications for you politically and optically.
So remember, this was 2015, and this was at the time that our president, Barack Obama, was still on a track of the reboot with Russia. So, you know, we can, you know, when we use the retrospectoscope, you know, it's important to put us in the context of the time. So it wasn't nearly as controversial as it would be right now. But that said, I think it's really important. You know, diplomacy is all about talking with the people that you have real problems with. And that was really my intent. On that trip, I not only talked with some low-level Russian officials. I actually did not speak with Vladimir Putin, although I would have liked to, but there was not any opportunity to do that. I also spoke with Jeremy Corbyn. I spoke with the deputy climate negotiator for China about the real issues, the crises that we have to solve, and we have to solve them in dialogue and diplomacy. And that's not only the war in the Middle East and in Syria, it's also this confrontation with nuclear weapons that we're heading towards, which is extremely dangerous, and the climate catastrophe. We need to be opening doors of dialogue right now, not closing them.
All right, Dr. Jill Stein, we appreciate you taking the opportunity to come on and answer these questions.
Great to talk with you as always, Chris.
All right.